Om Sarvadharma Stapakastam Sarvadharma Swarpakaha Acharyanam Mahacharyo Ramakrishna Yate Namaha. Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. Salutations to Sri Ramakrishna, who is the essence of all dharmas and religions, who is steady in all of the practices and attainments of all the world religions, who is the great teacher of all teachers. Salutations unto him, salutations, salutations. For there shines Brahman. May that Brahman protect, sustain us, and illumine our thinking consciousness. Free us from shortcomings and obstacles, and reveal to us the essence of the teachings in the scriptures. Om, peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om Hari Om Hari Om Tat Sat. With that brief and direct to the point sloka of modern scripture, we come to share with you some very profound teachings out of the Sanatana Dharma that are being broadcast to you here from Hawaii as our special group of islands. What are we? Some 5 or so major islands and a few smaller islands. And guess what? We all live in harmony. So if you were to, they say, draw a line straight from the Middle East through the middle of the earth, it would come up right here in these beautiful Pacific Islands, the Middle East being so war-torn. So we're looking at these 2 halves of the world, one living in the sunshine of peace and vast abundant waters, and relatively, at least even in this age, living in peace amongst each other, although they're separated into many different islands, many different abiding places. Like Jesus said, the kings of heaven are within you, and they're places of sojourn and abidance. And so we looked at that as a kind of announcement of our enjoyment of Shanti, Shanti, Shanti here in this part of the world. And it's a good place then, with our minds peaceful, in a peaceful place, to broadcast or to transmit, if you're talking about live streaming or you're talking about direct transmission from the gurus, from the acharyas whom I just chanted to. Acharya Nam Mahacharyo. His name is known among all the great Mahacharyas, all the great teachers. Sri Ramakrishna is known. And my brother sent me an email the other day about how many times Sri Ramakrishna told Naren, I am Chaitanya incarnate. So it's a very beautiful teaching because Chaitanya is, of course, the great God-realized Bengali saint of 1400s maybe. But then Chaitanya also means consciousness. So it's a beautiful double-edged sword there that comes cutting down. And that sword needs to be brought out. We're going to look at the sword today in terms of an injection, a hypodermic needle. And so I have 2 new charts for you that this 3-class series we're about to give you from this peaceful hemisphere is about peace. It's about harmony. It's about unity. And in that way, I thought, not an uncommon thought, but very unrealized. Swamiji said, even in our country, we haven't realized this. That means, although India has probably been the best example of how to bring religions together. I mean, this chart I show you, you see how many religions are indigenous, as it were, to India, including, more unheard of or less known religions like Sikhism and Jainism. So all of these religions have been living in India in relative harmony. Also, it might be said that India Hinduism has lived side by side with Mohammedanism, that is Islam, for many, many millennia too. So that's a great feather in its cap to live side by side with another major world religion and keep the peace and keep the ideal of ahimsa, nonviolence, non-aggression, as far as it can in a world like this. Because even Sri Krishna had to go to battle, although he didn't participate in it. There he was, having to be subject to it. So we feel that this ahimsa, this natural peace, and this state of non-aggression is God intended. Those are peace lovers, not warmongers, and they're also not among those who feel like war has some practicality on Earth. It should never be allowed. And of course, that doesn't mean it won't happen, as we're not naive. But the basic fact is that there are some things that we could do in this day and age at the behest of Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, who came as this great Mahacharya. I mean, we see him sarva dharma, means all dharmas he practiced and championed. And then Stapakaya cha dharmasya, he was steady in all of them too. Stapakaya means to be grounded in them. So we feel that if we've tried everything else in the world, uh, everything from mediation all the way up to tolerance, like the tolerance that Gandhi talked about when he tried to establish nonviolence amidst warring factions in his own country. And it hasn't worked yet to our satisfaction. Because again, we're not naive. We know that the first noble truth is suffering is, so we know there's going to be suffering and strife here. Having everyone get along is not going to be possible. I used to say when we were back in the 80s, when we were attending these interreligious conventions that some of us were invited to, that you could put a Rinpoche, a Swami, a Roshi, a priest, a sheikh, and other leaders of different religions in the same room, and you wouldn't see them getting along completely. They all definitely have their own religion, their own path, and they feel very strongly about it. So what needs to be broken down then is this intolerance, and we found out that tolerance doesn't really quite do it yet. So we were thinking along the lines of the great Acharya, Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, how he made it look so natural to integrate all the religions and he didn't just speak about it because a few beings in the past have spoken about it, and it's been a kind of ideal that's been a vision that some people have had amongst different religions, particularly in India. But as Vivekananda said, even in India, we have not done this yet. So but in India, they've had the most practice at it. And I'll show you some charts that demonstrate that, because India and Sri Ramakrishna have to rather be our ideals along this particular goal and avenue, because we don't have any other that we're looking at that have been successful and have been so recent too. So that's why I came up with this idea of the University of Universality. So what is it that we can do to bring factions together and not just, number one, say you have to tolerate each other, get along. That should have been done a long time ago. It should never have happened otherwise. Number two, even amongst religious leaders themselves, there's been this kind of idea of the sisterhood of all religions, like in Catholicism and so forth. They've come up with these certain sayings as, yes, we should be sisters and brothers amongst these religions, but they say it as if they were kind of coerced into saying it, like it was kind of a fact that they had a hard time admitting. What we want is this open-armed acceptance of all religions of the world, like we saw in Sri Ramakrishna, to the extent that they got practiced by him. So if we were to follow that great master and follow what he exemplified, like our founder here, Lex Hickson, did, he used to say, I mean, he started out in Vedanta and learned the Advaita of Gaudapada from Swami Nikhilananda, who was a direct disciple of Holy Mother. And then he went into Tibetan Buddhism and with Karmapa and got initiated, took me with him. And then he went into Zen Buddhism. and got a name there an ordination. And then he became the first American sheikh of the Jarahi order under Sheikh Musafir Effendi. And so when we asked him about this, he said, "Well, I just hold joint citizenship in several different religions of the world. I hold joint citizenship." So it's a sort of like Sri Ramakrishna's story of the chameleon in the woods. Basically, one person comes out of the woods and says, "Oh, there's a really strange looking creature in there. It's red." And another person next to him says, "No, I've seen that same strange looking creature. It's brown." Another person said, "No, it's actually green." And so they go on debating like this, each having their own view of what they saw, only to find out that the chameleon can change colors at will. And so that's this great soul who can step into different religious areas and take them on, as almost as a coloring, like the dye pot story of Sri Ramakrishna, where man saw people taking their white cloths to the dye master. "What color would you like this cloth?" "I would like that one ochre." Another person said, "I would like that one blue," because he's a Vaishnava. Another one said, "I would like that white or yellow." And so the dye master would take each of these cloths and dip them in the pot, and it would color them that color that each person wanted. And those people would walk away happy with their cloth. But there was an observer nearby that thought this mighty strange, that he could put all of those white cloths in the same dye pot, and they would come out the color that the person who brought them desired. So that was how Sri Ramakrishna said in many different ways. And I have some other beings from different religions who said these kinds of things that I'll share with you too. So to prove this point that amongst all the world religions, there are people who hold this ideal of universal harmony of all religions. It's just that it's very difficult to practice that amongst your compatriots, right? I myself have had, as in my years of a spiritual guide for Vedanta, under the auspice of Sri Ramakrishna, had people from different religions write me and say, "I really love Ramakrishna. He's my Muhammad. He's my Christ. But don't tell anyone." You see, they would say in these same letters. There used to be handwritten letters. I have them as proof if you want to see them. And now they're, emails and so forth. But basically, don't tell the head of my monastery, or don't tell, the Mother Superior, or don't tell this and that, because it'll cause me too much trouble. So these things can't be practiced in plain sight if you're trying to dig one deep well, which most sincere seekers are trying to do. Reminds me, that's a chart we have to put out of a person digging a bunch of wells and explain that story of Sri Ramakrishna. Another beautiful story of Sri Ramakrishna is that at the end of his life of practice of these different religions, he said, "I've taken many different flowers of the field," almost sounds like Jesus. "I've making many different flowers of the field, and they're all of different colors, and I put them into one bouquet, and I took them and offered them to the Divine Mother's feet." So these are two, maybe three things we're going to have to look at: India, Sri Ramakrishna, and the Divine Mother. And those three things are the one who the most complete injection of Brahmagyan. They're the ones who can give it to us. So maybe we should jump, while we have the time here, to two of these ideas, which are in the title and the subtitle of this three-part class. One is the University of Universality, and the other is the injection of Brahmagyan. That's the subtitle. So my own teacher, Swami Sheshanandaji Maharaj, peace and blessings be upon him, told me and told us in the congregation that he said, the West needs an injection of Brahmagyan. So we're going to look into what Brahmagyan is and what kind of hypodermic it comes in, and what kind of antibodies and antigens and antidotes are in it, and what kind of viruses get destroyed by it. And that'll be a kind of accompanying subject. But first we want to kind of attack this idea that the religions of the world are different. They're all of the same essence. I remember our own founder answering that question. They're all so different, but he would come at it from the opposite way. And in fact, some people would find out that I was a follower and devotee and initiate of Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, and they would tell me, "Oh, you're a follower of that one who thinks all the religions are the same." I said, "No, no, that's not a full understanding of Sri Ramakrishna. He knew they were all different in their methods and their approaches, and sometimes even in their ideals. But he knew the essence was the same. So we have to look at this essence, the swarupa that I just chanted in this sloka to Sri Ramakrishna. Sarvadharma swarupakaha and sarvadharma uh, swarupini, essence. So basically, we want to look at that in accord with this university of universality. How is it we're going to bring all these uh, differing, sometimes even warring religions together? We have the additional problem is it's not just the religions that war against each other. Inside of one religion, they'll go to war with each other, like the 300 or 400 years of fighting between the Protestants and the Catholics. That was going on in Europe for so long. My teacher used to point that out, say the Christians, they can't get their own affairs together. And so if you can't do that inside of your own religion, it's going to be very far cry to try and do it with many different other religions. But in a sense, maybe going to another religion might be refreshing because inside of one religion, you might have found too many rocks, pebbles, and mud in that hole you were digging in this particular age. It's called conventional religion. And you hadn't struck water yet, maybe for some many centuries, maybe even a couple millennia. You didn't strike water again since the original spring came up. See? So in that way, we have to look at how it is that we can bridge those gaps and strike on those problems. So number one is going to be making our mind more universal in nature. Number two, it's going to be getting an injection of Brahmagyan from Mother India with a great knower of religion like Sri Ramakrishna pushing the plunger on the hypodermic. That's how we've done it, why we live in Hawaii and why we have peace and why we love the idea of universal harmony and why we even know that beyond harmony is unity. There's a ground. Even Meister Eckhart said that, in early Christianity, that God is the ground of all existence. So he was talking non-duality. Well, as we look at this chart then, and let's do so, because it gives us a good start on the subject, you can see that right in the middle of it, there's that tower. So this is a university. Could be a university anywhere in the world. There are hundreds and thousands of them, but universities for universality, we're not finding them. In fact, we're not finding that this great subject of every religion is your brother and sister religion is being taught even in school. We never got it when we grew up with our parents, and we never heard about it in our churches if we went to church, and we never heard the society speak about it. And if we did hear somebody who was from a particular religion, they were not talking about all religions are brothers and sisters and they should be getting along. They were saying what instead? Oh, I better use the right arm for this. Only my watch keeps the right time. Only my watch keeps the right time. But Sri Ramakrishna said, you have to check your watch by the sundial. All watches are a little off with each other. So the sundial is always correct. The sun god. Rasmimantan, Samudyantan, and so forth. The beautiful chants out of the Rig Veda, the oldest scripture of the world, talk about the sun and his perfect timing and how he shines on saint and sinner alike. That expression came later out of Christianity, but first it was there in the Rig Veda. So in that way, then, the University of Universality houses and holds all these religions on one campus. You can see here in the chart, just as the way I've depicted it, that in order to do that, you're going to have some sort of taste of the nectar of wisdom waters. This is that injection of Brahmagyan, but maybe you only heard of it or you met somebody who had had an injection, like, a guru or an advanced soul or a Sangha member, and you said, how come you know so much, and why aren't you suffering the same things I'm suffering? You know, lack of understanding, smallness of vision, karmas that are getting in my way, ignorance about the nature and capacity of the mind and the scriptures. Why aren't you suffering those? Because I found this person. A man has come to me from a land who never sleeps, as my teacher used to chant one of the songs in India. And that injection of Brahmagyan was given to me directly as a transmission, and it woke me straight up out of all these problems. Now we want everyone to come to this vision. So as I was saying, and I didn't finish my train of thought, we've tried everything else. What haven't we tried? This very thing. Bringing all the religions together and accepting them, number one. Number two, not just tolerating them or calling them sisters and brothers, actually practicing them like Sri Ramakrishna did. That's very important. This chart will help you see that, basically, is that if you hear about this great ideal of my Sufi friends used this word unicity, but I looked it up and it's like a business, it's a company. So it's not really a word that, but it's that idea of everything being unified from the very get-go. That's its nature. It's all unified by Chaitanya, by consciousness. And all the religions have grown out of that one field, like flowers out of one field of different colors, different fragrances, different shapes. They're all beautiful. And maybe we should read the first quote on that. It says here, the world's religions are like rivers. They flow to the sea and consist of the same water. Again, they're like different colored flowers in a bouquet, all fragrant and beautiful. They resemble children from various races and having different colored skin, but all precious. Simple analogies like these should help humanity begin to cherish all faiths as part and parcel of their own birth religion and chosen religion, because those two can be different, as we're seeing in the world today. You can be born in a religion and not practice it. You can even be alienated from it because of the church or the society or the upbringing of your parents, but you still walk around saying, well, actually, I'm a Christian or I'm a Hindu. But you haven't never really practiced it or accepted it. But there are those beings that have had a choice of religion. They said, I choose that religion. And so whether the two of those, whatever the case is for that, you have to learn to immediately look at your own faith and say that same essence of faith, love of God, understanding of wisdom, and desire for peace and harmony and well-being amongst all people is in that religion too. And that's where in India you find such a beautiful bouquet of those things. Like, say, Sikhism living next to Jainism. That's a very beautiful and poignant bringing together of two religions. The Sikhs are the military of India quite a bit. The Jains are, I won't even lift a hand or a finger toward an ant, toward hurting anything. So you've got these brought together in the same country, living side by side in harmony, each providing their own function and each having their own ideal, yet there it is. And that's why the Jains never were in a war. The Sikhs were, but and they were even having troubles back in the 60s and 70s in India. But basically, the Jains were never in a war. So they had this very high ideal of what we call ahimsa in India that would not be transgressed. Ahimsa is the number one yama or practice and observance in yoga, in Raja Ashtanga Yoga, in Patanjali Yoga. So very important that. So therefore, a university of universality then would design an open-minded curriculum that would aid all dedicated applicants to enter hands-on courses in them all, deftly allowing the student of world religion to gain some direct experience in the practices and disciplines of each. A greater peace and world harmony would be the result. We've tried everything else. Let's try this. Even pop singers out of the 60s. Give peace a chance. So if they had a deeper vision that wasn't addled by drugs or something like that, then they had this idea that there's a better way to live than the way these countries are living against each other all the time. So religion should be the leader in that, not politics, not societies, not lower wisdom, not plain conventional knowledge universities. They're not doing anything except maybe giving a few course in world religions, which doesn't go very far from those I've talked about who have entered into them. It's just kind of more like a comparison rather than a harmonization. Right? So we need the harmony of it, not just the comparison. Comparison would be nice. I'll be giving you kind of a comparison as we go on with this 3-class series. But anyway, it probably should be said in this that tower of non-duality literally towers above, below, beyond, and beneath, and throughout, permeating all religions. And that's going to be a very important fact for us to know, like a Meister Eckhart. Oh, this is the ground of religion you're talking about. It's the ground of existence you're talking about. And then some church fathers hear about that, and they want to ostracize him. See, so there's that. My watch keeps the only right time living right next to. Well, these are all flowers of the field, right? And they all have nice fragrances. Why would I prefer one and throw the other away or trample one underfoot, Sri Ramakrishna said. And that trampling underfoot is done by the worldly people. That's why I put up here, and I looked it up as of 2 days ago anyway. They say 1.9 billion non-religious, secular, and unaffiliated beings in the world. Of some 8 billion, not quite 8 billion souls in the world. Every day there are beings, and this is an important fact to look into. There are people who are so-called being born and so-called dying. That is, there are people who are coming into the body and they're leaving the body. And most of those are not in knowledge of the fact that coming and going is all nonsense. There's only one soul and it's stationary. And the appearance of things is what's called Maya, and the appearance of movement is what's called samsara. Things actually appear, like shaking a firebrand. Those things appear in the air, but you stop the firebrand and they go back to the firebrand. So what happened to those appearances? Oh, they're in the firebrand. It's just basic cause and effect. They don't exist somewhere outside in the air. Like the firebrand guy goes searching for them and brings them into it. It's part and parcel of it. See, so that gets rid of a lot of superstitions in religion to realize that that firebrand is this mind that's always shaking it. So there are almost 8 billion minds who are thinking non-religiously, if they think at all. Like, so they're thinking or they're not thinking. If they're thinking, it's that I'm an atheist or an agnostic. And if I'm not thinking, it's just like, I don't care. I just want the goods of the earth. And those are the kind of people that get into power and begin to take resources from the earth and desecrate things. So become power hungry, and eventually warmongers, drop bombs on countries, things like that. That's not dharmic, and it's definitely not ahimsa. In fact, maybe now that we've just broached this subject, because we have 3 hours to get into this over the next 3 Sundays, let's look at some of the definitions that I got. Now, the beautiful thing of this, and I did this some years ago, is that this is right out of our own English dictionary. Except the first one. Well, actually, the first one is too. The universalism is actually, I looked into 5 or 6 different dictionaries that gave their idea of what they thought universalism was. I took portions of all of them and put it into this quote. So these are not my words. But let's leave that for the end. Let's go first to probably the most tolerant and easy to take to the self way of thinking, perspective, is ecumenism. Ecumenism is of or relating to an entire body of churches, particularly of one religious tradition. So, we've tried that. So I've already said, even there, they'll start warring against each other, even though Christ is their common ideal, even though Krishna is their common ideal, even though Muhammad's their common ideal, even though Moses or Abraham's their common ideal, as far as incarnated personality, they'll still be coming to blows inside of one religion. So if you were to make ecumenism true to itself, then this would be like, these are all my children. All of these ways of thinking are a part of me. And just like an ocean, I will absorb them into me, right? What's it called? Waves in the ocean of consciousness is how I named this chart. Waves in the ocean of mature universalism. Sorry, but the ocean is the key word there. What's eclecticism? These are dictionary definitions, not mine. To select what appears to be best from a number of various doctrines and methods. So if you're an eclectic person, you're saying, you look around for a while. If you're interested in religion at all, that is, you're the other, 7.1 billion that do believe and have a face. So you look around for one. Maybe this takes you a long time. They've like the metaphor, like it's like dating before you get married, right? You have to try a bunch of potential subjects for your mate until you find one, and then you get married. So people look around with their religion like that and finally fall into one that they love, hopefully, and will stick with and be faithful to. So this is what eclecticism will afford you. And so those two kind of are at the top of this look at different perspectives in the world of these almost 8 billion people who think about God or don't. The next is fundamentalism, a movement in 20th century Protestantism stressing the literal interpretation of the Bible is the only truth. Ouch. Well, there goes our vaunted, all religions are of the same essence. There goes our idea of trying to bring all the religions together in one bouquet. And because that they're not going to, those several billion of Christians aren't going to like that. You see, the Catholics maybe a little bit more. Like the Pope is one of the ones who said that. One of the recent popes. We should begin to look upon all other religions as our sister religions. I gave a talk at a church. I didn't really know me that well. They might not have asked me, but I went there in San Francisco and I talked at the church. As I went in, I saw the bulletin board, and on there was that quote, because they knew I was from another religion and they were having me on the pulpit to talk to them. So they wanted to know that one of their popes had said we should take all other religions as a sister religion. So I walked into that atmosphere feeling much relieved and gave my talk about this kind of thing. Try to do something to bring people together in that spirit of harmony. So, but in fundamentalism, then you see whether it's fundamentalist Islam, whether it's fundamentalist Christianity, fundamentalist Hinduism too, you've got this really the beginning of this really thick and unmovable problem in people, which is my watch keeps you only right time kind of narrowness. And it's very hypocritical at the same time. And it will start wars between all religions. Atheism's next. Again, dictionary English. The doctrine which proposes a basic disbelief in the existence of God or deity. So there's some of these factions of the other chart, 1.9 billion unaffiliated people fall into that. If they look for a word for it, you say, well, what's your faith? Or do you believe in God? No, I'm atheist. Or they say I'm agnostic. What's that mean? According to the dictionary, the doctrine which espouses the belief that God is unknown and unknowable. That's kind of welcome news to the ears of a non-dualist, because that's true. That rings of truth. You can't know God, not with this ordinary mind. However, the great souls have said you can know God because you are that. That's if you get under this pillar of non-duality. If you go up the path there, which I'll show you, and through the courtyard courtyard of open-mindedness into the University of Universality and get into the chamber that upon which that tower of non-duality is laying, you'll find these Advaitic seers. You'll find these non-dualistic ways of thinking, beings who are going to say, oh, you don't believe or disbelieve, come right in. See, because you're going to be easy to train in the fine points of harmony of all religions. Anything else there? Well, I put intellectualism there. Devotion to the exercise of the intellect and irrational intellectual pursuits. So that's a perspective that could be sort of represented by our demons of the university, as Vivekananda used to call them, the collegiate level of things, and those who are seeking lower knowledge as their goal, lower knowledge in which to get goods of the earth and enjoy. It's kind of associated very much with materialism. Materialism can be a tool to use to help everybody. It can also be a rank materialism, as you've heard it called, where it's just for the sake of pleasure itself and for selfishness that it gets used. And Sri Ramakrishna says about that intellectualism, dry knowledge is like cheap fireworks or a rocket that bursts into a few sparks and dies away. We live in the Great View here as of 1 month ago. So we're up here on the 1st of the year, and they're setting off the fireworks. So the laws were passed now. You can't set them off very much, but people are still hiding in the hills. You hear big booms out there. And but it's a lot less pollution, a lot less noise. So we lovers of peace like that. But on the other hand, you see some fireworks going on. I was looking out toward Kavaihai from my deck that night at about midnight, and these fireworks were going on. It was just beautiful. And others were no comparison. They're just little duds, little sparks. And then they died away. So I thought of this quote. And over here, these were bursting into many different colors and patterns inside of patterns. And I was like, there's where I want to be, under that display. So he goes on to say, but spiritual knowledge, as compared to worldly knowledge, is like an expensive rocket that showers different colors, stops, then bursts forth again many times. Yet the minds of pundits and scholars are fixed on dry knowledge, like the eyes of a vulture fixed on the carrion pit. Sri Ramakrishna not only said that about the intellectuals of his time, he also said that about the Brahmin priests. He was a Brahmin priest, born that way. And then he looked at his own caste, as it were, and saw that their eyes were fixed on the carrion pit of materialism, sensualism, and pleasures and things. And the problem with that is then those priests who were afforded the opportunity to teach people about religion, true Hinduism, or how Jainism existed in India, how the Sikhs down the road in the Sikh temple are the same, practicing the same love of God as you are, and how the Shaktas, the Shaivites, the Vaishnavas, and everyone else who are looking down their nose at each other are worshiping the same ultimate deity as you are. That's why there's something called Brahman. That's why there's something called God. That's why there's something called Allah. That's why there's something called, secretly, Yahweh. You can't even spell it that way. So basically, this is the formless reality behind everything, and that's this power of non-duality. Underneath all of that is secularism, indifference to or ejection or exclusion of religion and religious considerations. There's just no thought going in that direction at all for the secularists. And then how about materialism? Again, for a fourth time, out of our own dictionary, English dictionaries. Preoccupation with matter to the exclusion of intellectual and spiritual considerations, based on the belief that matter is the only reality. If fundamentalism was a painful thorn in our side, this is the worst pain in our side. It's a huge thorn in our foot. It's this idea that there is no other reality but matter, because that doesn't even leave the door open for some greater understanding like fundamentalism might. You know how Vivekananda described that is there's a big lake up in the mountains. You know, it's very shallow, like Silver Lake out up in Oregon. I walked out into it and I couldn't find water over my knees. The whole lake was that shallow. But over in the corner of the valley, this lake is pouring into a valley, into a canyon. And the waters all of a sudden become very furiously focused in this canyon called a waterfall. Then it pours out into a pool that's not only vast but deep. So the first pool was vast but shallow. The waterfall was intense, and then the pool that it turned into was vast and deep. This is how Vivekananda describes this this evolution of a soul from narrow to intense, almost fundamentalist, like radical religion, to this final realization that all this is Brahman. I am Atma Brahman. This self is Brahman. What about your matter then? What about materials? Well, those are the bodies of my children. I love them. Those are the corn growing in the fields. They're giving me bliss. They're nourishing me, as Jesus said in the Bible. So all of these things that were once just matter turn into God, living in different forms. And that will change this outlook from materialism to secularism to the intellect to choosing one of these, whether I believe or not, if I'm even going to accept it. And finally, putting me on a waterfall intense ride in my one religion that I'm digging one deep well in, only to find that I'm beginning to suspect that there are other people in other religions who are digging those wells in the next acre, you see, and their water is the same as mine when they strike it. It's all one underground well. Oh, this is all called patent and straightforward, sensible thinking. So why can't we do something about it then and realize it amongst all of us? Because it will, according to this other chart, you see, it will, yeah, it will lead to this greater peace and world harmony. And as nothing else has done that for any length of time, periods of peace, periods of war do not prove the theorem, right? That all religions are the same, that we're all of the same soul, no matter what our skin color is. We can start getting into racism and all of that too, you know, but we don't want to go there. We've got enough problems just to prove this one great hidden truth to us. So let's look back at the University of Universality and show that if you get this taste of the waters of nectar in any religion that you're following, you hear somebody speaking right, you're speaking the truth. Falsehoods are gone, mixtures are gone, and you find somebody. I mean, it's the same in lower knowledge. You find some professor who's speaking about the subject you love in a higher way than anyone else you've ever heard speak about it. The same with spirituality and religion. You all of a sudden hear people in religious circles that are speaking in an entirely different way than most other people in those religious circles were speaking, like our Lex Hickson when we first ran into him when we were younger. So you get those waters, and that sets you on this. If you can't read it in the room, you can probably read it as you're looking on the live streaming here. Path of religious harmony goes right up through all of those religions that you still have to learn about. You still want to open to. They hold keys to bliss, peace, love, real eternal life that you haven't even imagined yet. And your religion hasn't been able to awaken in you. There's a religion in Buddhism called Zen, for instance. So if a person stays in Zen long enough and their Roshi, their leader, thinks he'll really benefit by going to a different religion, or he'll really benefit by going to a different Roshi, then they'll send him there so that they can have this opening to the universality of all teachers and all religions. And it will be just exactly what the doctor ordered, because he's standing there with that hypodermic. I'll show you that probably next week, if not today some. Up the middle concourse there, then, that's kind of a dirt path, path of religious harmony to the courtyard of higher awareness. This is a trip we have to make in order to understand that the injection we're about to get, called Brahmagyan, is higher than Gyan. It's higher than Agyan. It's higher than Michigyan. Remember, Asato ma sadgamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya. That means lead us from lower truth to higher truth, from lower knowledge to higher knowledge. That Michigyan, there are people living by it. Micha means false. There are people who are living by false truth. One of those false truths is my religion is better than yours. That's Michigan. That's just outright fallacy. They're all flowers in the bouquet of the hand of God. And, this will be a major thing for some people to realize. Will actually lead them towards higher enlightenment if they can get past that tripping stone of narrowness. So that courtyard of higher awareness is going to call to us once we've had this taste of what wisdom is truly like, and we've walked this path that's gotten rid of hypocrisy and narrowness. Then we reach this court of higher awareness, and there we see the banner. Isn't it beautiful? And blazing color there, University of Universality. I want to enter therein. And when I do, I can't help but notice that it's so open-minded and all-accepting that it's called non-duality, as if the religions are still so dual. Dual means they live in the idea that there's a separation between me and God. That's dualism. And when that disappears, then it's called non-duality, and I see I and my Father are one, or Tat Twamasi. Long before Jesus in India, they had these great Mahavakyas. I have charts on them here. I'll show you. The great Mahavakyas means Tatvamasi, that Brahman that you think you're so different from. You are that. Come closer, come closer. If you want to get warm, come closer to the fire. If you're numb with the frozen feeling of religious anti-harmony, then come closer. So this is what you'll find underneath that banner of University of Universality. Now look at the rest is just very simple. There in the foreground, there's Islam, Christianity, and Judaism on the right. Well, I've heard some people say that's one religion. Ideally, that's one religion. And you might as well throw in Abraham before him, because that's the earliest of all Judaism. From Abraham to Moses to Christ to Muhammad, that was one stream of consciousness that should never have been seen to have any breaks. You can enjoy the differences in those religions like you can enjoy different flowers, right? Take them out, even look at them separately. Oh, let's study this genus, put it back in. But basically, that bouquet is in what we like to call the Divine Mother's hands. And she likes all fragrances, all colors, all flowers. It reminds me of Holy Mother once saying at a puja, she says, oh, bring flowers, bring blue flowers, bring yellow flowers, bring white flowers. I want to offer them to all my children. So it's not just an idea, it's actually there in the outer worship of the thing, called puja in India, that you make these offerings to different deities, to different children, to the sentient jivatmans that are infilling the body of the children. We just set up here, children are precious, even though they have different color skins. That's one thing that can even outstrip and befuddle a religious figure, is to meet a child from a different race and a different religion. It's not like, or you're hating them because you're from another religion. If you meet an adult like that, you can hate him, but you can't hate a child like that. You might have some idea that you can, teach that child your religion, and that child's following a bad religion, but you can't actually hate the child in the circumstances they were born in. So why not just use that as an example to say that people are born in different religions, let them be. Just introduce them to your own, but as you do, don't have that narrow feeling that my religion is right and yours isn't. Actually say, now tell me about your religion. I want to know. I've shared with you. It should almost be a matter of jealousy. Reverse. I mean, well, I'm going to give you everything because I think this is better than yours. This will be good for you. What about you thinking that I've given them everything about my religion, but they haven't given me one thing about theirs? That's making me upset. You should have this two-way street, that you want to get back what you gave in kind. And that's one of the requisites for walking through the door of the University of Universality. They'll check you there, just like they check you for metal in every other university now. They're going to check you for lack of metal, as lack of character, and how you're narrow. Oh, you can't come in here yet. Go back to the fountain and try and get a little taste of that water that broadens you out. And make sure it's not the bar down the street. We don't want that kind of liquid. You know, go and take the religious waters, the waters of true life. So anyway, a little bit about these three. The size and the structures of the buildings make no never mind. I'm not trying to make one look better than the other, less than the other. However, population-wise, there are those differences. There are 5 major religions amongst all of these. In fact, I even have listed in the back there other religions. That's not my saying. They're actually calling that. This collection of some, I don't know, must have seen at least 20, 30, 35 or more other religions that are small that people are following. Amongst them actually is this one here too, Chinese folk religion. It has a huge following. China being such a heavily populated country with so many followers of different kinds. So I had to put that there, just some representations. Baha'i also very small, but coming on strong. See, and so there are those kinds of religions. Confucianism, not a lot of people following it anymore, although Confucius as an ideal has 8 million followers. That's a lot of people, isn't it? How about then Zoroastrianism? What you say? Is that like the worship of Zorro or something? No, it's Zoroastra. He's a great saint and prophet of the time. And I've only ever met one Zoroastrian on a plane when I was upgraded to business class one time. Next to me was a Zoroastrian, and I spent up talking to him through the whole flight. Like 5 hours went by like nothing. And talking to him about how his religion had come and declined and how he felt nowadays, what his father was like as a priest amongst that religion. So that's what I'm saying. If you have a deep interest in them, then you're going to go want to look into them. If your religion is warlike, then you can study Jainism. So Swami Brahmeshananda, he's now lying quite old in the sacred city of Shiva, Varanasi, writes me every once in a while. I write him, and he talked the Ramakrishna order into letting him go into the Jain temples and spend months and months studying their religion. So they let him kind of sabbatical from the Ramakrishna order to go and he said, bring us back what you find out about Jainism. So now I have 2 or 3 charts because he shared everything about Jainism that he found out from Jain priests and and how they conduct themselves and everything. And I ate it up just like he did, because Buddhism, very nonviolent too. And Hinduism, fairly nonviolent. So basically those religions of India have that attracting force that how did you get successful with so many followers by being nonviolent, right? That's a key question. When others have gotten their huge might and their huge population through moving across countries and waging war on them, see. So I'm going through this part quick and a little random. There's Sikhism there. There's Taoism. All Taoism also not a lot of followers. And on the right-hand side, there's Shintoism, even less followers. Ethnic tribal religions are really a part of other religions, but there are so many of them, you can't even shake a stick at them. And they all have their own beliefs and in their cultures and in far-flung countries that we probably never set foot in. And so you can see all of these are of mention under this huge tower of non-duality, as if there's some unseen presence that does not take form and does not take a name. And that's why we want to look at Mother India's Advaita Vedanta, is that basically that non-duality was championed by India. It was brought up as important or more important than religion. And it started back as a realization before they even wrote it down. Like Rig Veda, they say, oh, that's the oldest religion. Some say, no, not really. But when you consider how long India has been in existence and before the Rig Veda was written down, that adds another several thousand years to these truths being realized. The truth of what? The truth of non-duality, that Brahman is formless, that Allah is formless, that God is formless, that Yahweh is formless, that Buddha nature is formless. And that's something I've been talking about a lot lately for practitioners in Vedanta, that in SRV here. We got to really make ourselves open and available to the idea, at least, that my nature is non-dual and my nature is formless. Those two go together. It's a beautiful thing. It's very freeing, particularly when some of these can be very limiting and very binding, as we've been seeing, which is why we want to try and bring them together. So let's take up a few of these quotes. This time, probably I would say Sri Ramakrishna, of course, the harbinger of this idea of universality, but his main follower, Swami Vivekananda, also took this up in a big way. So this quote down at the bottom, Vivekananda says beautifully, "We want to lead humanity to the place where there is neither the Vedas, the Bible, nor the Quran. Yet this has to be done by harmonizing the Vedas, the Bible, and the Quran." I loved hearing that when I first read it from his letters, because I grew up in a country in the 60s and so forth, when there's kind of this idea of free this and free that, that people were talking about no religion. Later on, that got into pop songs. Same person who would sing, all there is love, and Give Peace a Chance was singing no religion. No, how does that work? Basically, we met like section. He said, all these religions, we want them all. They all exist, so they are. And Brahman is at the foundation of all of them. The Almighty, the Great Spirit, if the American Indians called it, is at the foundation of all of them. So are you going to take the chance of pissing off ultimate reality by taking one of his flowers from his bouquet and saying, this isn't true, this isn't right? No, these all belong and precious to the Lord. Just like all children of different colors and all people in the University of Universality are of all different races and all different temperaments and all different characters. And as we'll find out, all different karmas too. So let some of you spread like wildfire. I'm sorry, wildfire. Like wildflowers is good too. And preach the worship of the universal aspect of God, a thing that has never been undertaken before in our country. No quarreling with people. We must be friends with all. Mankind ought to be taught that religions are but the varied expressions of the religion which is oneness, so that each may choose the path that suits him best. Nectar to our ears, right out of this fountain. If you heard that, and Vivekananda was sitting here by the fountain and you walked up and he said that to you, you'd walk the path. And you'd be interested in how I can harmonize religions and make things much better with my brother. So I grew up, one of my best friends was from Ceylon. Another one of my best friends was a Catholic. And so I was growing up amongst people of all different temperaments when I was a boy. And one was an intellectual. And one of my brothers was an intellectual. So basically we had this very experience of the different temperaments and characters of people who were getting along and being best friends. So it's not that hard to see how this could not only be possible, but it's needed now. If you took away the strife that religion causes, the war that religion causes, imagine how much more peaceful the world would be. Then you'd only have the warring of factions between the materialists and those beings uh, who are competing with them, see, for goods and services and all that, which could be the intellectuals. So what if you took away all that religious problem and just left it with its religious fervor, with its religious faith, with its religious essence of non-duality? And then you had a gauge like this, right? Uh, Now, what happened in that measuring device to uh, 7.9 billion kinds of violence in people? Now it's down. Now it's down to 1.9 billion kinds of violence in people's minds because the Lord took it all away. Love of the Lord took it all away. I'll show you that in the Brahman injection, where you use yoga basically and you put them together, like like Tantra and Buddhism. Wow, what a great hybrid that was, and still is. See, we'll look at that more closely because it's very akin to this subject. Here's the last quote of this chart, and it actually was very easy to go through. Um, the subtitle, by the way, is Perceiving the Natural Unity of World Religion. It's not a bringing together, so we don't have to worry about failing or succeeding. It's already unified. We just haven't seen it yet. It's very non-dual, the way that that gets presented by beings like Vivekananda and Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. And what to speak of Holy Mother, who just loved everyone in all countries. Sorry, you can't come to me because you're a Christian. And those words never even occurred to the mind of Sri Ramakrishna. People came to him and said, I saw you in a dream. You're my Jesus. There were Christians that were coming to him saying that. So that goes beyond all kinds of barriers and limitations and just kind of goes straight to the point. Here's another thing Vivekananda said. We believe that this is the conscious or unconscious basis of all religions. The explanation of the whole history of human progress, either in the material, intellectual, or spiritual plane, that the same spirit is manifesting through different planes. Might as well gone on to say, and different religions. Same spirit manifesting through them. That's what the Vedantis believes. That's what Swami Vivekananda came to teach us, at least penultimately, because the real thing he was there for is this tower of non-duality, which we can't look at as a religion. That's why they say Advaita, non-duality is, you can't call it a religion. You can't really call it a philosophy either. Although philosophy probably comes closer than religion, because religion has not proven itself yet, like Indian philosophy has. Jnanam always runs less risk than bhakti does. It just goes straight to the heart of the matter. Bhakti could have some problems between differing, but when you hear the non-dual truth, that makes you a universalist right there, then and there. So we have actually made good headway in the time that we've been given so far. Let's look at this back to India now, at Ekam Sat Vipra Bahuda Vedanta. And I want to give you some examples if there's time. If there's not time, we can at least steer our way back to why India is the most qualified right now to help us. Because we did just hear Vivekananda say even India hasn't done this yet. So with Ramakrishna coming, it's like a permission given. But there are a lot of people who will not accept that kind of universal attitude in India because they're still based upon generations and generations of having their own sampradaya, their own cult, their own sect, their own religion, their own way of thinking, which is based on their own deity, which is different from other deities. The beautiful thing about India, it's got many deities. That's also one of its problems. Remember listening to, what was his name? One of the great recent teachers, sit and talk to a group of Hindus. Huh? Yeah, Krishnamurti sitting talking to a bunch of Hindus, like, like big congregation of them. And he said, "What's the matter with you? You know how many gods you have?" He was like talking to his own people and criticizing them for having so many gods. So there's that perspective. But the other thing is that you look at the other religions and you only have one God, and that's a good thing, isn't it? But what if that one God is warring against other so-called gods, and also it's considering itself to be superior to all other gods? What if also there's no teaching in your religion about that God? So India can validate the idea that it has many deities, vindicate itself of the risk of that, because it championed non-duality first. See, if you have that tower there, then people will flock to it thinking, there's no danger of me going into these other religions. There's no risk here. It's going to be all good because the university curriculum and the professors there, the sages, the seers, the rishis of India have already proclaimed that there's only one reality, and it's beyond name and form, it's beyond time and space, and it's beyond cause and effect. So it's also beyond religion. And so they walk up this courtyard from having their first taste of the nectar of non-dual truth into the building, meet these seers, and go open arms to other religious courses. See, we're saying that this actually should be a course in Atmic realization. I didn't bring that chart, but I have a chart called A Course in Atmic Realization. It said, what do we want all these people to learn? The religions? Not necessarily want you to learn the essence of all of these religions. That is what they came to when they realized that there's just one God, because each of them is saying that. So let's not put that as a separatist faction. Let's put that rather as a good thing. Oh, you realize God was one? I want to know about that. Because that's where we might be able to consider that the oneness that they're talking about of their God is the same oneness that we're talking about in our God, right? It's the same water in different wells. Your neighbor's digging a well, or you're going to go over there and say, my water's better than yours. It's all connected to the same reservoir, underground. And underground means beyond Maya, beyond samsara, beyond limited thinking. And reservoir means a vast repository of consciousness, pure conscious awareness, timeless and deathless. So it's not only nameless, formless, timeless, spaceless, and forth, it's birthless and deathless too. That's what Jesus called it. That's what Krishna called it. That's what Buddha called it. So you see the title of this chart here, Ekam Sat Vipraha Bahuda Vadanti. That is, it's been described, translated uh, as truth is one. Saints and seers and sages call it by different names. And it's also been talked about in this way from the Upanishad. There are many mighty rivers flowing into the sea, which when they meet their destination lose all sense of name, form, and identity. They merge into the boundless ocean of absolute reality from the Mundaka Upanishad. Yata Nadyaha Shandamanaha Samudre Ashtam Gachanti Namarupad Vihaya. Namarupad Vihaya means basically beyond name and form. Those names and forms all merge into the ocean of consciousness that we were just looking at. It has many waves to it, that's all. But those waves also silence, and there's just a flat ocean for a while. The sailors don't always like that. Where's the wind? But the seers go, it's all peace now. It's all peace. I can just be on this ocean of consciousness. So you see this thing is set up much like it was an early version of this chart, only before I added the idea of University of Universality into it. This was just basically a statement out of Hindu scriptures, Vedic scriptures, basically. You can see there some of those same religions are placed on these roadways. There's Shintoism, there's Jainism, there's Buddhism, There's Hinduism, there's Christianity, there's Islam, there's Zoroastrianism, and there's the Judaism at the bottom here. So all of these are these pathways leading to the mountain. As Buddha says, at the highest inward altitude of spiritual experience, the Arhat beholds the Paragatam, the supreme goal, as well as all the many pathways below, leading to the mountain. So this is how Lord Buddha, in a very high state, would say that. Other Indian seers, because Buddha was an Indian rishi, would sing it too in different ways. So here we are in one way. It's been sung very beautifully by the beautiful realized soul, Jafar. Jo kuchahai so tu ihai तुझ से हमने दिल को लगाया जो कुछ है सो तू ही है तुझसे हमने दिल को लगाया. And so beautifully he says, "O Lord, I finally understood that everything exists in thee. Every heart is ultimately united in thee. Nothing exists but thee." So here's like non-duality put in the most beautiful of devotional terms, based on the highest non-dual truth. This is what we want, you see. And you can get an injection of this. I'll show you that next week. Please come and see the beautiful Brahmagan injection chart that has all these different ingredients in each different needle compared on who it's being administered to, by what great soul. Going on, though, with this song, Jafar says, this is beautiful, because this is very rare to find a bhajan or a stotram of this kind, even in India. He says, God and goddess, man and woman, Hindu, Muslim, Christian, all are brought into existence by thy own inscrutable will. What are these beings without you? They all exist in you. You don't see him making any judgments, seeing any superiority or inferiority there. The next verse is even more succinct and to the point. Churches, temples, Kaaba, all places of worship. You fashion them and cause all beings to bow down in them. You have become the worshiper, the act of worship, and the place of worship. Nothing exists but thee, Jo Kuchahai. So that's one of the ways in which this gets sung. We always like to bring that out as one of the special features of music of this kind in India. There are kirtan, there are devotional musics, there are bhajans that have wisdom teachings in them, and they're just stotrams that really come from the highest kind of lofty thinking of these beings based on their own experience. Because he said, I have finally realized, O Lord. He's not just saying, well, could it be that all these religions are the same? Or could it be that you're causing all these beings to go to different temples? Could it be? No, this is a fact. It's the beings themselves that have to open their minds. They need to take a course in the University of Universality, and they need to get an injection of Brahmagan before they do. We'll go into that more next week. The rest of this chart has to do with where these paths lead. You can see from the bottom, we could read the quote, open-minded beings know that all religious pathways sincerely followed can take the soul to blissful oneness. The point there is sincerely followed. What is known only to the few, however, is that while there are many paths to get to the goal, there is really only one way. For all paths only lead to the foot of the mountain. From there, the intrepid soul, desiring full enlightenment, must conquer the single pitch to the summit. That dizzying ascent to get to the ultimate goal is called renunciation. And that's why we go to Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, the king of renunciation. Christ too, a king of renunciation. Buddha too, a king of renunciation. These great souls can say things like this and make them really stick in the hearts and minds of aspiring beings. Very beautiful truths come from those kinds of utterances. So before we lose the point of that, it's a very beautiful thing to think all these paths, all these religions just lead to the foot of the mountain. From there, they had to renounce everything. My throat catches just even to try and say it. So they had to renounce everything. In the Buddhist Pure Land schools, for instance, at one level of Pure Land, you had to renounce being a Buddhist before you could help others, save others from suffering. So you had to give up your particular affiliation with the religion so that you could reach with the truths of the religion you had practiced all beings. What is that mountain? We look at it in the time remaining. The one pitch going up it, there's renunciation. It's the singular way to, well, shut my mouth, shall I say it? Liberation. Is there a word for it in other languages? In India, there are several. Moksha, mukti, samadhi, nirvana, asamprigata. In Buddhism, Zen, satori. It's the way of the Tao in Taoism, is to reach its highest goal. So in that way, what do they come to? Just like in the University of Universality here, what did they come to when they walked the path? Court of higher understanding into the first of all temples, with the edifice of non-duality being pronounced as the ultimate of all achievements. In the same way here, these paths will lead to the non-dual understanding, like, say, Meister Eckhart saying, that Almighty Father, we're calling it, is the ground of existence for everything. So you see the pitch up there with little resting places along the way. Those are actual, I think this might be the Matterhorn that I grabbed an image of, but basically there are different places to rest on the way up to the summit. And there you see about renunciation, Sri Ramakrishna says, the message of the Gita is what you get when you say Gita many times in a row. It turns into Chagi, which means renunciation. And there on the right-hand side is his talk about everyone thinks their own watch keeps the right time, but they should check their watch with the sundial. And so we have Ekam Sat, one truth, Vipra Bahuda Vedanti, approached by many different pathways. But those different pathways we're saying here are leading us to that base of the mountain. From there on, the experience of the seers have to kick in. That's why we have to go to the great teachers and ask them, what they found at the end of the path. Did they reach the goal? And what was the goal? India will say it was moksha, a state that was always at hand even when I was walking the path. It was a state that was always present even before I set foot on the path. It always is, always was, and always will be the truth, non-dual of truth, and realizable by the practitioner along these pathways. But at some point, then, what's going to dawn on them is that they must renounce these lesser goals. Gatam, Gatam, Paragatam, Buddha said. Gatam means all these different goals that you're seeking, not only in religion, but in life too. Those will get released once you have a taste for it and realized when you've taken the masters and the doctoral graduate courses in this University of Universality, then you'll let go of all that and say, I think I will stay here at the top of the tower called non-duality. And India evinces plenty of souls that have done that by name. And they've written some very beautiful scriptures called revealed scriptures that are a different kind of scripture than has been put out, not only in the lower scriptures of India, but in other religions too. This is why we need to go to India uh, and um, and refer to her and consult her about such things as formlessness, some things about ultimate liberation called moksha or mukti, and such things as trying to get along with your neighboring religions. That's what we'll look at next week. And I don't know how much time we have at this point. Uh, Maybe just enough time to take some examples of what we're talking about here. I've got several to choose from here. Um, when we get into the injection of Brahmagan, we're going to show some of the examples by which a course in this university could be undertaken and what it could amount to. Like, for instance, if we study what Swami Brahmeshananda shared with us from his time with the Jains, if we look at Jainism really quickly for about 15 minutes, then that's going to show us how that religion of Jainism, though it seemed to have its shelf life up to the being called Mahavir, and 24 generations before him, they practiced non-duality for that many generations, ahimsa, for that many generations until Buddha appeared. So we'll look about how these religions not only dovetail into one another in India, how the best of them get absorbed into each other as the newest expression comes along, like, say, with Sri Ramakrishna and the new dispensation of Vedanta today we're getting through Vivekananda and others of his brother monks. And that will also give us this hands-on example of what we have to do to look into another religion, not just say, oh, that's just another religion, I accept it. We have to actually learn what they learned in that 24 generations that they taught, and how contemporary people will just go and avail themselves of that as if the whole world were a university of universality. Let's look in the remaining minutes, because that's why I brought some of these charts along, was to kind of avail us of some of the great teachings of India. And this will be more of a matter of kind of proof than otherwise. I mean, put your money where your mouth is. Okay, I will. Let's look at some of the prime examples of the major religions of the world and what they said. We can spend the last 5 minutes doing that here. So there's that quote that I can say again. Mankind ought to be taught that religions are but the varied expressions of the religion, which is oneness. That's that non-duality. So that each may choose the path that suits him best, the path that leads to that mountain where the Advaitic truth can be realized. So there you see a beautiful image that has sat for a long time, like at our St. Louis Vedanta Society in the United States. That's where I found it and took a picture of it, asked permission to use it, and so forth. You see how basically this is, actually that garland around it is a real garland. People would walk up and see that ideal and actually offer the flowers to it like it would to a deity. So here's the deity of religious harmony here. I think we could probably call her Dharma. I have a quote about her, the goddess Dharma, that I'll share with you next week. So basically you see it, and you can't quite see that very well because of the superimposition. At the top, there's the Om sign. Then there's the Dharma wheel to the left. Then there's the Tao symbol, yin and yang to the left of that, below that. Then there's the candelabra of Judaism. And then there's Islam's 99 names kind of thing. There's the cross of Christianity. And it goes around like that, showing the different symbols for the different religious traditions of the world. Some of them here. We've got 7 in this case. And so I took quotes from each of their scriptures and from each of their seers to show you how much they think alike. And this isn't just some sort of wild concept or some future hope even. It's something that needs to be realized and brought into this world. Uh, Number one, because we've tried everything else. Number two is because it hasn't been tried yet. So there you see under the Hindu Om sign at the top, when ahimsa, that's nonviolence, the capacity, the incapacity to harm others, and dharma, the inherent goodness dwelling in the heart, are fully developed in man, then he is said to have attained enlightenment. So that's how important these two are together, nonviolence and the teachings. That's what the University of Universality is going to insist upon when you walk through the door. You know, drop all your weapons, no metal allowed, right? No guns, no knives, no violence, no bad thoughts even. Now, after that's gone, we ought to check and see if you have dharma in your being, and we ought to check to see if you're nonviolent. Otherwise, you're not going to fit well in our course of classes here. You're going to cause trouble. Let's see here about Buddhism. Meditate deeply and reach the great shore. Branching streams cannot compare to it. Then, sitting in utter silence, as the heavens turn and the earth is upset, you will not think, you will not even wink. See how the stillness of the Buddha comes through that kind of beautiful teaching. How about the Tao? A tall tree is at first a tender shoot. A tall tower is raised by placing a few stones atop one another. Journeys of many leagues begin with a single step. Be careful of your thoughts. They are the beginning of your deeds. So Lao Tzu would say, basically, like we say, everything comes from the mind. Thought turns into objects later. So you could see in the ancient Chinese way of thinking, Taoism, that was also there, and how to realize it. How about Judaism? Who is the wise man? Whosoever is constantly learning from others. Now that's a beautiful right about now. Isn't that what we're talking about? I went to the university so I could learn from these great religions. I didn't go there to prove mine superior. I didn't go there because I wanted to make them brothers and sisters. I didn't go there because I had any narrowness in me or wanted to have war on them. I went there to learn this. That's because I'm wise. Who is the rich man? Whosoever is contented with his lot. Who is the strong man? Whosoever is capable of self-mastery. That's that course in Atmic realization, right, that you would take. One of the courses offered at the University of Universality is the course in Atmic realization. Let's look under Islam. Thou shalt hear what no ear has heard. Thou shalt see what no eye has seen. And at last thou shalt come into that sacred presence, and thou shalt find only one sole being in place of the world and its mortal creatures. When you go to that, take those paths that you're taking, they're all fine. You come to the base of the mountain, then that's when you'll see this mountain take over everything. What's in the past, the fields, the trails, the religions, forgotten. You extracted the essence out of them, and with that energy, you'll climb the mountain to non-dual realization. And that's called liberation or moksha in India. It's not named in other religions. It's named by inadequate names, like paradise, you see, or heaven. But it's nameless, it's formless, it's birthless, it's deathless. It's not subject to coming and going, rebirth and coming back again, and being born again. Beautiful, right there in Islam. How about Christianity? I like this one very much. When I turned within to behold wisdom, as well as madness and folly, let's talk about the real and the unreal. Then I saw wisdom excelled folly, as far as light excels darkness. And I invested myself with her, as a raiment of glory, and put her on my head as a crown of joy. The apostles and the followers of the apostles of Christ would say things like that in the original realization of the beauty of this new religion, which didn't have a name yet, right? The new dispensation in times of Judaism. So I like the word her. I put her, wisdom, as a raiment. That's clothing, means raiment is clothing. I wore her. I put wisdom on and walked around with her. Next we have, of old heaven and earth were one, like an egg containing seeds. The pure part was drawn out to form heaven. The gross part became the earth. Heaven formed first, earth thereafter. Divine beings were produced between them. A beautiful kind of Samkhya philosophy of its own. And then there's Zoroastrianism. The two primal spirits who reveal themselves in vision as twins are the better and the bad in thought, word, and deed. Between these two, the wise ones choose aright, the foolish not so. All of these things would be on the test that they'd give you after you took, before you got to your master's. Did you hear this right? Are you absolutely certain that all the religions come from one God? Do you have any doubt whatsoever that they all are inherently in harmony with one another, and it's only mankind's false thinking, the evil thinking, the foolish, that have rendered it otherwise? No, I don't think we need to allow that anymore. Yeah. A good first class in R3 coming up here. Om yata nadyaha shandamanamha samudre ashtam gachanti namarupa vihaya tata vidvan namarupa vimuktihi parat paramupuiti divyam Om. Like mighty rivers flowing into the sea, losing all sense of name, form, and identity, merge themselves into the boundless ocean of absolute reality. Jananim Sharanam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Pado Padme Toya Shritva Pranamami Mahur Mahur Pranamami Mahur Mahur Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat